Welcome to a Nothing from Nothing production. Hello, everybody. This is Mark Christopher with Bill Turley, and this is the Junction podcast, a podcast about growing up in Brooklyn in the 1970s and 80s. We're hoping to protect the names of the innocent as well as the extremely guilty, and there were plenty of those. Well, here goes.
Trick or treat!
Welcome back to a special edition, a special Halloween edition of the Brooklyn Junction. How are you, Bill?
Good morning, Mark, on this beautiful October fall morning. And as John Candy and Uncle Buck said, welcome to radio station WI. I don't have to go to work today.
This new phase is fantastic. So, yeah. So getting back to the purpose of this episode, and I think you had a couple of questions for me.
I do have I have three questions for you.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Beatles or Stones?
I love them both. I listen to them both. I have such a well of affection for them both. I play in a band that does mostly Stones. We do Beatles, but we sound closer to the Stones. But have to pick the Beatles.
Okay. How about I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched?
When I was a kid, my first fantasies were about Barbara Eden. But as I've grown older, I look at Elizabeth Montgomery as stunning. So I'd have to say Bewitched.
And lastly, Addams Family or Munsters?
Well, I just think the Munsters are funnier, and I love Fred Gwynne as a goofy Frankenstein.
Addams Family is on such a higher intellectual plane. I mean, the Munsters is just like campy, corny humor. The Addams Family. I mean, come on, it's so much more sophisticated.
Are you out of your goddamn mind? I'm telling you right now. The Munsters 800 times better. I mean, for Christ's sakes, it had two hot Marilyns, right? Just like Bewitched had two dicks. Two dicks. Bewitched it had two dicks. Dick York and Dick Sargent. But the Munsters theme was the best of all the themes.
Brings me to our topic for today, which is Halloween. And I'm sure the Munsters and the Addams Family inspired many Halloween costumes. And did you trick or treat when you were a kid?
See, when we were a kid, I just spoke to my brother about this because I knew we were doing this episode. And I can't imagine that it happens to this level today. When we did the trick-or-treating, we would walk out, we would go out on the streets of Brooklyn at, I would think it must have been about 9 a.m. And we would go a full day.
You didn't go to school?
I think I remember this one spectacular Saturday. And we left at 9 in the morning, and we literally took a map and mapped out the neighborhood. Now, I've got to be in the fifth grade. I don't know how old you are in the fifth grade. I'm saying 10.
You're 10, about 10,
My brother must have been about 7.
10 going on 11, yeah.
Yeah. So it's fifth grade, maybe fourth grade. And, the parents had no fears. Go ahead, have a good time,
Right.
You both took some old clothes from my father's. My father kept all his clothes. Now, when he dressed well, he looked like Sean Connery from Goldfinger, right? But he also, whatever reason, had, these baggy trousers and these old trench coats. The two of us dressed as bums and put like brown stuff under our eyes. I don't know what we did, charcoal and stuff. Yeah. And we looked like hobo children. And we literally, there was a circle at 34th Street and Avenue M which was a place filled with dog crap, effectively. It was the first dog park before they picked up the
Okay.
poop. And we literally said, here's the circle and here's the 10 avenues. It was like Avenue P. It was 35th
Right,
Street.
right.
And we said, let's start over here. And I mean, we're, children. And we we literally hit like hundreds and hundreds of houses and had to bring our bags back, right, to the house, dump, and go back out again, right? And so
Right.
we did that. And you're talking about young, healthy children. We did it for, Billy and I talk about it all the time. We put in a full, exploited labor factory day, 12 hours.
Yeah, well, look, Halloween is so much different today than it was back in the 60s and 70s.
Yes, 80% of the families participated for miles and miles. You could walk all of Brooklyn at that point. And your parents had zero supervision. Even when you were super young, you just all went out in big gangs and knocked on doors.
Yeah, when you got home, did your parents sort through the candy and make sure there weren't any tainted items? Right.
No, it could have been lead paint chips. They wouldn't know.
No razor blades in the apples or anything like that? No, okay.
Not that I recall. I remember my father was pissed because we took his basement beer refrigerator and stacked bags and bags of candy. And 4 years later, literally 4 years later, we're moving and we're cleaning out the refrigerator and there was still candy left, frozen and attached to the sides of the refrigerator. It was insane.
You found, yeah, okay, all right. No. So let me ask you something. What was your favorite candy of all?
I was always partial to really sugary stuff like the Swedish fish. Yeah.
Okay.
I like the Swedish fish, but one thing I abhorred and hated, which just literally is a guarantee that you're going to be sitting in an orthodontist chair by the time you're 40, was those candy corns. God, I hated them.
Oh, yeah.
I hated black licorice.
Yeah.
And I hated candy corns. But everything else was fair game. And I ate stuff that would rot like Mary Jane's.
See, if you got like a Mounds bar or a Milky Way, I thought that was a nice score, But yeah, what used to drive me crazy was like the people who would give you like raisins and apples and pennies. What am I going to do with that? I want something I can stick my teeth in.
Yeah, those were rare. Usually got junky little candy things. But there was this elderly woman that we really liked. She got bushels and bushels of fresh apples, right? And just gave out apples. We were pissed about that. And I remember
Kids don't want that.
apples.
Of course not.
So this one kid, I felt so bad about this, right? I felt guilty afterwards because instinctively I knew it was a good thing to do. Story, it could be apocryphal, of some, crazy old woman putting razor blades in apples.
Yeah. Yes, that's yeah. Look, I'm sure people did it. I'm sure people have, tainted candy, but a lot of it's urban legend,
Well,
I'm
we're
sure.
all dressed in our Halloween costumes, and this poor lady went, apple picking or something, We went out east and got fresh
Right.
apples, and a whole gang of us are taking the apples and just throwing them down Flatbush Avenue. They have razor blades, They can have razor blades. And
Yeah.
I felt guilty because instinctively I knew it was a much better thing to get an apple than a Mary Jane. You know what I mean? And yeah.
Wow.
And when you walked around the neighborhood in Brooklyn, it was fair game. It was fair game to walk around and hit every house you could. But if you were a house that did not participate,
Oh, yeah. Big
I
trouble.
remember
Toilet
So,
paper and eggs,
worse
right?
than that, right? And somehow, on black tar, it's pretty hard to get rid of a giant drawing of a penis.
Yeah.
I remember us elaborately draw penises, complete with the testicles, on these black driveways. These tar driveways. We didn't do it to the Hasidic Jews because we understood that
Yeah.
it was a religious
Yeah,
situation where
when you
Halloween
got
was
home,
forbidden. But anybody who didn't participate, who we knew about Halloween, if they didn't participate, they got a drawing on their driveway. And these drawings could only be seen by satellites or Google Earth. They were that large.
this is like the Brooklyn version of Halloween. And that's like, I always, when you're a kid, you always saw these little storybook, idyllic American versions of Halloween and kids bobbing for apples. I never bobbed for apples. Did you ever bob for apples?
Yes, and I remember.
You did?
Yes,
you bobbed for apples.
I was at a Halloween party, and we were the mother.
Where was this, in Kansas somewhere?
No, the mother had set up the whole Pinatown docking,
right,
and all whatever. The kid, unfortunately, well, maybe it was a good thing. Birthday fell on Halloween, and we went to the Halloween.
What was this, like 1947
yeah,
or something?
1944, right after
right.
electricity. Right. We're bobbing for the apples, and this punky kid kept pushing people's heads into the water to the point where they were almost drowning. And the mother would have to intercede. Oh,
right, exactly.
You're still a little idiot, bob for your apples. And I remember his name, but I'm not going to say his name. But I remember pushing me in so much that I thought I was going to drown with an apple in my face. Hey, you fucking douchebag, you're going to bob. You're going to bob for that fucking apple. Go ahead, douchebag. You're going to bob away. Yeah, you mentioned it. I forgot all about it. Another near-death experience on the Brooklyn Junction.
Trick or treat.
So, what's interesting about trick-or-treating, though? I remember talking to my dad about this, who was born in 1922. And he told me that as a kid, they didn't trick-or-treat on Halloween, okay? But they would do this thing on Thanksgiving morning where they would dress up like you described, like a hobo or ragamuffin, and they would go door to door, and they would get like apples and raisins and things like that. But it wasn't like a candy thing, but it was on Thanksgiving morning. And I thought this was kind of strange. And years later, I did look it up. I Googled it, and sure enough, there are some YouTube videos of kids on Thanksgiving morning going out and doing like a trick or treat thing, which is interesting. I think this whole trick or treat phenomenon developed probably in late 40s, 50s. That sound about right?
Well, research is like started in the 30s, but exploded post World War II. Everybody wanted to have a good time.
Yeah.
It was the thing about it, and it's uniquely American. And it's also, I think it's just like everything. I always talk about existence being binary. The internet's good, the internet's bad, different.
You said, you're saying uniquely American. The evangelicals don't go for Halloween. Oh, no. It's Satan's holiday. Yes, just like Harry Potter and all that.
You're going to find Satan in that goddamn Halloween costume. What you doing? Jesus Christ didn't do Halloween. It's so stupid. But what they morph like Christmas and Halloween into these supposedly, this was supposed to be All Hallows Day, and it was supposed to be about, the king and the emperor would do the dance of death with a peasant. And basically the concept was they're all going to the same place. They're both going to die. So it started in some sort of religious, almost pagan.
Yeah. It's the eve of All Saints Day. That's right. What it is.
And,
really.
Similar to Christmas, we turn this into a thing about self-gratification, and about commercial aspirations of you was turned into such a big commercial holiday and fun. So there's a yin yang to that. The fact that it's fun is a great thing. And none of this is sacred. It's like
you mentioned this, the spirits of the dead and all that. I actually, okay, so I'm going to be 66 tomorrow, so I'm still a kid at heart. But last year, for the very first time, my wife and I actually marched in the Greenwich Village Halloween parade. And it was a lot of fun. It started down around Canal Street, and it went all the way up to around 14th Street. And it was so much fun. It really was. But I had this thing that I threw together. I called it my Day of the Dead costume. And I had this like rubber mask that I got at this store in Greenwich. It's not in Greenwich Village. It's in the 20s somewhere. It's called Abracadabra. And it's like this rubber mask of the Day of the Dead mask. I put a cowboy hat on there. I had like skeleton gloves and all that, and I put a suit jacket on, and it was just like the coolest thing. And I was freaking people out a little bit, but Yeah, that Halloween parade I've seen it as a spectator, but I never marched in it before, and I did it for the first time last year. It was fun. I'll never do it again, because there was a lot of waiting and it was a little bit chilly. But that is a really cool thing, and to come down to the village and watch it, it is a fun night.
That parade is more about the costumes, and it's kind of a cool ritual because we need rituals. It kind of keeps us together. Basically, Halloween plays on our fears and fantasies. You know, we have scary decorations, fun houses. I think we all like a moderate level of fear in our life. I think that that's a human condition. It's changed since we were a kid. It's quite different. I think there was a period it kind of died down because nobody wants to let their children run wild in the streets anywhere. Yeah. I mean, the fact that, here I am, maybe 10, my brother's 7, and I'm going literally down every block in Flatbush. And that wasn't the only time. And then years later, it became, if you hung out with some edgy kids, it became shaving cream, eggs,
right? Yeah, it's that point from where innocent childhood trick-or-treating turns into mayhem. When does that happen?
So Carolyn, she's not a big fan of it anymore. She's like, well, I'm going out. You deal with this. Because you want to deal with this, you deal with this. And so I literally sit there and I could tell it's different because even though my block is a very fan in Long Island, it has like a 3 or 4 block area where it's just teeming with kids, but the parents are there. The parents are joining them all through the parade route, if you will. And as they come down, and it doesn't start till it's 2 or 3 hours, and it's very supervised. But I'm glad they're doing it in a way, other than the shaving cream all over the street.
I know that when my kids were growing up, there were a lot of house parties, Halloween house parties. But I remember the first year that my wife and I let my kids go out and trick or treat on their own, and they were thrilled. And by the way, they still love Halloween. Both of them still dress up. But the deal was they had to take a cell phone with them, okay, in case anything happened, So I guess what happened was they turned the phone on when they left the house just to make sure it worked and everything, and they never shut it off. So we could hear everything that they were doing during this little trick-or-treat outing. And it was hilarious. It was just their reactions to the candy, like, oh man, we got a Mars bar. It was really funny.
I just remembered, because you're bringing this up, we went one time and you say trick or treat, right? So we went to this one smart ass's house, right? And you walk up with trick or treat. And he would do a card trick.
Oh, come on. All right.
I can remember he would come out and do a card trick, and then you'd be like, okay, we don't want to see the card trick. It'd be a simple card trick, and then he would give you a little treat, I forgot about that.
You talked about this thing where you and your brother fanned out in all these different directions, and did you go into apartment buildings?
No, now that you said that.
Because in my neighborhood, there were a couple of apartment buildings, and if you could hit one building, that would be a big score.
See, now you're making me think you're smarter than me.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the apartments you could hit on one floor, and there would be multiple floors. You'd come back, you'd have to go back, dump your candy at home, and go out again.
Well, I mean, the whole dumping of the candy. I'm sure in that old refrigerator, it's probably in some dump somewhere. There's some candy from Halloween 1974.
Wait, did you have a favorite costume? I'm talking about something that you dressed up in. What was your favorite costume?
Yeah, I went as Richard Nixon once, and we came back from the party, and I'm sitting in the front porch with the kids coming up, and I'd hand out the candy with the full Nixon look, and I'd say, tell your parents, I'm not a crook. I'm not a crook. Watergate was a hoax. Absolute hoax.
But there was one year that my aunt made costumes for me and for Tom, and they were it was like a leopard print. We went as leopards, and it had a tail and everything, and she made it herself. She was into this phase where she was had the sewing machine and was having fun with it. So she made costumes for us.
Yeah, you were 40 at the time. I remember you and Tom in that leather leopard phase.
Oh.
Well, one time for the kids, I dressed up as Frankenstein and I sang the Monster Mash karaoke. And that was probably a favorite because the kids just loved it. It was like, the Monster Mash, it was a graveyard smash. It caught on in a plan.
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. For my monster from its slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise, he did the monster mash. It was a graveyard smash. It caught on in a flash. He did the monster mash. From my laboratory in the castle east to the master bedroom where the vampires feast. The ghouls all came from their humble abodes to get a jolt from my electrodes. They did the monster
One other thing I wanted to touch on, is there a favorite Halloween movie that you have? Any. Is there something that you kind of like watching around Halloween?
Well, I was always a fan of the original Frankenstein movie, which was, I think, in the 30s. I might be wrong. But when he's playing with the little girl, he's escaped his dungeon lair, and he's playing with the little girl. And he's got a criminal mind. And he is throwing the daisies into the water, and then he throws the little girl in the water. It was always the scariest scene for me when I was a kid. So that was one that I've occasionally gone back to. All those cheesy Dracula movies were pretty cool. And there was ones that I remember when I was a teenager that used to have a ton of nudity. And even the more commercial ones like Halloween, I'd always wait for the obligatory nude scene where the girl would strip down and go swimming alone in the lake. So,
Yeah, Mark, it sounds like you went to a lot of cheesy movies, with all due respect.
yeah, of course. You got issues when you go to those cheesy horror films waiting for the obligatory nude scenes. Or you're a teenager.
So I remember when I was a kid, they used to show this one film every Halloween night, and it was called House on Haunted Hill, and it was with Vincent Price. That was pretty eerie. That was pretty scary.
He was a pretty good Dracula, like an older gay guy Dracula. And then there was Christopher Lee, who was dominant in the 70s when we grew up. And of course, the original was Bela Lugosi, who was absolutely insane, massive heroin addict, and died of it and got buried in that Dracula outfit. Insane.
There's another thing that I have noticed over the years, probably in the last, 15 or 20 years. There are a lot of these Halloween stores that pop up around the season. And I see them all over the city. They're just, and they're on Long Island too. I see a lot of these what are normally vacant stores will turn into, the Halloween Depot or something like that. And then, they'll sell Christmas items a few weeks later. But, have you noticed that?
I avoid those places like a plague. Jeez.
I mean, you can get just about anything at these stores
As you know, my wife Carolyn is extraordinarily organized, and she would settle out all the costume stuff for the kids a week before. And we were apple picking with a lovely couple that are very good friends of ours, Laura and Pat. And Laura and Pat can be described as Fran Drescher and Joe Pesci. So as we're apple picking, we have gotten Ryan and Taylor settled in their pirate and princess outfits. And she had gotten one of her children, Dami, into an extra outfit we had left around, but there was nothing for Gianna. So she starts to panic and she goes, "Pat, what am I going to do, Pat? Jeez, we got to get Gianna a dress. What are we going to do? We got to get her a dress. We got to get her some sort of costume for tomorrow." And it was going on for the entire apple picking thing. And so Pat just, after a while, just lost his temper and just said, "Okay, I got an idea. Why don't you just give her a coffee cup and a cigarette and she can go as your mother?"
Oh.
Her mother was wonderful, total saint, by the way. But the coffee cup and the cigarette were omnipresent. I think Gianna went as Morticia Adams with that long black dress. I think that was also popularized by Elvira. And there were two really incredible reasons why I liked Elvira. And I think it was the fact that she had two great opinions on what to do about world peace. But moving right along, the Addams Family is still quite the cottage industry. Yeah, so the Addams Family, right, the difference between the two was the Addams Family was based on an idiosyncratic family. I think Mr. It just died, the midget that played Mr. It. I think he just passed away.
Cousin It.
Yeah, he just passed.
Cousin It.
Cousin It. And
Right.
now they actually have grown they actually have a more popular run, aren't they? Don't they have a new television, a new movie with who was the, oh my God, who was the daughter in the Addams Family? There's a whole
Wednesday.
series with a new Wednesday. They have a whole series of movies based on Wednesday right now
Right.
that are huge hits, right? They made the movie The Addams Family, which was successful. They haven't, the Munsters hasn't carried on the same sort of commercial.
No, because they had that, they had the Addams Family with Raul Julia, played Gomez, and Christina Ricci was played Wednesday. Okay, so on the Munsters, okay, Lily Munster was played by an actress named Yvonne DiCarlo, who was, quite
Yes.
glamorous in her day. But what I had read was that she had, for a long time, had a relationship with the Shah of Iran.
Get
Yeah,
outta
it's
here.
true. Just Google it. Yeah. Along with Gene Tierney was another one of his squeezes.
Well, she was a famous, beautiful actress,
Tierney,
you
yeah.
know? And I think Agnes Moorehead, who was the mother in
Angora.
Bewitched, was in Citizen Kane or
She
something.
was in Citizen Kane. Yeah, she was.
Yeah, you know?
But yeah, Yvonne DiCarlo was, she was one of the Shah's squeezes there over the years, back in the 50s.
Just goes to show you that everybody's been blinking all the time. What is Halloween like on the Upper East Side amongst the hoi polloi?
They just have, they'll have candy out in the lobby for the kids, and all the residents can contribute. They really don't want kids walking around, knocking on the doors.
I wouldn't think so, right? One thing that's cool about how Halloween has changed is my neighbor, for instance, has little kids, and he has a haunted house pavilion in front of his abode. And what it is it's got full height
Oh, yeah.
Frankenstein animatronic figures
Yeah.
interacting with ghosts, goblins, and Dracula.
Yeah, no, I've seen those.
And it's pretty cool. I mean, what we used to have was little plastic and paper mache runners, as our decorations for Halloween. But it probably helps the kids get into a spirit. But with that, I'd just like to say, Bill, thank you once again for helping putting this episode together of the Brooklyn Junction. And this is the Halloween edition. So, and again, please like and subscribe. And we're going to take you out with one of the spookiest songs ever written, Ghost Town by The Specials. Take care.
See you on the next one. Have a happy and safe Halloween.
Trick or treat.